Hope you're buckled up. It's been a week for sports and Indy. We'll start here at the D2 college football level, and the Greyhounds took the road, went to Iowa. They played the Peacocks, and they won 40-13 against Upper Iowa. This is a game that we thought was going to be a closer game. We didn't expect this to be a blowout by any means from the Greyhounds, but that's what they delivered. How'd they do it?
Well, it was a pretty slow start, honestly. First quarter, 0 points scored on either side. Then coming out in the second quarter, they took a 19-0 lead. At one point, they were up 26-0, and I was told the backups were in the fourth quarter, so obviously a pretty easy win. But stats-wise, Gavin Sukup is the man. 19 for 22, 227, 5 touchdowns on the day. He was also tied with John Lewis for the leading rusher in this one, and those are some impressive stats. Anytime you see 5 touchdowns up there, obviously you can tell he had a good game. But the big thing I'd want to highlight off of that, Ethan Hand becoming that red zone target. 2 catches, 2 touchdowns, only 13 yards. He's definitely going to be the guy to look for whenever they get inside the 20.
And it's funny because it's only inside the 20, right? This guy doesn't see a lot of receptions outside of the red zone, but doesn't need to. It's a great blocking tight end. Absolutely amazing to have in the run game. But to be able to turn him into a 2-dimensional tight end in the red zone makes this team so much scarier to face once they're inside the 20. But this guy, Gavin Sukup, 5 touchdowns on the day. Obviously 2 to Hand, 1 to Crowell, 1 to Carver, and 1 to
I think Kobe Lewis.
Yep. Exactly. So 4 guys having a touchdown for 5 passes from Sukup. It's absolutely crazy. But this defense, we have to talk about it. They limited to Upper Iowa to just 4 for 13 on third down. And that keeps your offense on the field. That establishes dominance on the gridiron.
Absolutely. And the one thing I do want to note is that with this win, the Greyhounds are going to retake that number 1 spot in the GLVC. So that's big for playoff implications. I know we heard some news earlier this morning. I'll let you get to that. But you said the defense limited them to under 200 total yards, and I know that's something Coach Keevers was very, very happy with this weekend. 7 penalties, though, gonna have to clean that up heading into the postseason. Those are those little details, little nitpicky, but you're gonna have to clean that up if you're wanting to make a run in the playoffs.
As it sits right now in the Midwest Regionals, you look to the postseason, UINDY in the playoffs right now. They would head on the road to Pittsburgh, Kansas, where they would play the Gorillas of Pittsburgh State. And for anybody who knows UINDY football, that's the exact same stadium that they've gone to the past 2 years to play postseason action, and they've come up on the losing side both times. So this game, this matchup, this team of the Gorillas definitely marked on the Greyhound schedule, and it possibly may be a team that you want to play in some scenarios to get some pride back, get that game back, and finally get over the mountain that Pittsburgh State has been for UINDY these past couple of years.
Absolutely. A very impressive win. Obviously, they're going to be heading into the last 3 games of the season. Southwest Baptist will be the first of that. 2 home games coming up. Big for the Greyhounds. Going to need some wins to end off the season.
Well, when we come back, we're going to go to IU and Division I football. Curtis Rourke was out. How'd it go? We'll find out next.
Good morning, Greyhounds, and welcome back to your Wednesday show. We have some very exciting things to talk about with our very special guest.
So what do you find unique about UINDY, and what kind of pulled you here?
What are you doing?
Watching Good Morning Greyhounds every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m.
In the heart of Indianapolis, our main mission is to keep you informed, bringing you local and national news. With the upcoming presidential election, there's no better time than now to tune in. But the most important part is you. This is UINDY TV News.
The story keeps developing. The plot gets thicker for IU as their record runs to 8-0. No excuses for this Hoosiers team. Starting quarterback Curtis Rourke, he was out with a hand injury. In steps Taven Jackson, a transfer from Tennessee last year, to step in for his first start at IU, and a solid game for them as they win 31-17 over a Big Ten opponent in Washington. Huge game with your starting quarterback out, and what message does this send to not only the Big Ten but the country to win with who a lot of people consider your best player in Rourke to be out?
Well, I mean, this team coming in, I believe they're still ranked 13th right now, so obviously proving that they should be ranked. They are a very talented team, able to perform without their quote-unquote star player. Obviously, a lot of people are saying that this team goes as far as Curtis Rourke is going to take them. That is clearly not true. This is a talented team all around. They held a pretty good offense in Washington to only 17 points, but Will Rogers, 2 interceptions, that's not what you want to see, and obviously the defense was able to pick up when the offense was not there. Taven Jackson, though, in a touchdown and interception, 124 yards, not too bad. Justice Ellison, though, really the highlight of this team this weekend, 123 yards and a touchdown, carried them on the run game. But next week, big news, Curtis Rourke is supposed to be starting. As of last Monday, he got surgery, got a couple screws in his thumb, but that'll be against Michigan State. He's expected to make the start there, so IU fans be on the lookout for him next week.
You're a 6-point favorite heading into Michigan State, and that's a tough matchup. Big Ten game on the road at Michigan State, that's a tough place to play. Everywhere is tough.
Absolutely.
Everywhere's a tough place to play in the Big Ten. But a lot of people are looking at this as a trap game. But with the culture shift that we've seen from Coach Signetti, I don't see this team doing anything but winning until they get to a roadblock in Ohio State. And even then, that's going to be a game to watch.
Absolutely. And this is a Michigan State team that just took Michigan to the fourth quarter pretty much. 24-17 was the final score of that one. So you look at it, you could say it's a trap game. Michigan State's not as bad as people think they are. They're just missing a couple pieces here and there. Defense hasn't been great, especially against teams like Oregon. But I like that you mentioned Ohio State. I believe that this IU team has a very good chance of making the Big Ten championship, even with a loss to Ohio State. You think about everyone else in the Big Ten. You got Oregon in there, no losses. They're probably not going to lose again. Penn State, it comes down to this weekend's number 3 versus number 4 in Penn State versus Ohio State. So it's really going to come down to these last couple of matchups to determine who gets in. And I think that there is a little bit of room for IU to make it in even with that one loss as they currently sit atop the Big Ten.
This team's so fun to watch. And I think Ellison coming out on 29 carries, putting up near 125 yards and a touchdown is a huge statement for this team and their offense, saying that we don't need to throw the ball over you. We can run behind our offensive line and get where we need to be like a freight train. So to have a back and Tyson Lawton who can step in and run for 4 or 5 yards a carry as well. He wasn't called on as much this game, but to have the backfield, to have the offensive line to carry a team to victory even through injury and trials, everything else. And I think it says a lot coaching-wise, too, to keep everybody focused. That was one of the biggest games, if not the biggest games, in terms of football that IU's had on their campus in years. It was college game day. Outside of Rourke's injury, there was a student that tore his ACL trying to kick the field goal for Pat McAfee on game day. So, you know, props to him for getting up there to try it.
That's effort right there.
There's maybe next year, right? But I'm glad that that performance didn't transfer over to the gridiron for IU as they pull this one out.
Yeah, and Lee Corso, not Corsaro, wrong C name, but Corso got to come back. He used to coach IU about 50-ish years ago, and it was cool for him to get back. Everyone was very welcoming of him. I thought that was a cool story, but that was what I was going to next, that guy that tore his ACL. They gave the other guy, his name was Jake as well, a chance to kick for both of them to win $100,000, and it wasn't even close.
Well, he shanked it.
He did.
Both of them. So that was the good news. We'll get to the bad news here in just a few minutes as we move up a step to the NFL. The Indianapolis Colts play the Houston Texans this Sunday. We'll get to it next on Last Call.
Are you feeling alone in your faith? UINDY Catholic gives you an opportunity to get involved in a religious community on campus, providing sacramental needs and fellowship for prospective students and giving you a sense of belonging.
We just want you guys to know that God loves you, He delights in you, and He's in awe of you. And we would love to meet you. So you should come on out.
UINDY Catholic, a community for you.
Well, here's the bad news. 23-20 the final score as Indianapolis took the road. They went to Houston to play division rival and the Texans, and losing by 3 there. Trying to think of a word other than horrific performance from Anthony Richardson. You're looking at 10 for 32, 175 yards, touchdown, interception, and we have yet to see him click in the passing games. The Colts dropped this one. Where's your head at surrounding this Colts team?
That's exactly where my head is. I have absolutely nothing to say about this team right now. I mean, I'm trying to be respectful. I told you before the show, if we flash an Anthony Richardson graphic, I might lose it. But 10 for 32, 175, a touch. Jeez, no way. All right. So you guys can see right here, 31% completion. That is doubled by C.J. Stroud, who had one of the worst games he has had all season. And everything I say right here, you're going to have to ignore it for the later part of the show. But for now, I'm going to get my point across. Anthony Richardson has thrown 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Can't get my numbers right. 7 interceptions, while Joe Flacco has 7 interceptions and 1 touchdown. So that right there is just a, what are we doing?
A breakdown of where the Colts are at, yeah.
Yeah. But I will highlight a little bit of a positive. Jonathan Taylor's back. He had a pretty good game. 20 carries, 105 yards, and a touchdown. Everyone loves to see that. But this QB comparison is honestly not fair for Anthony Richardson. I feel like if you're going to put someone on the other side is going to have to be Drake May or like Bo Nix. But Bo Nix played better than Anthony Richardson did yesterday too. So it's very confusing because they're not a horrible team. It's not like this is a very bad team. The defense, I like it. The offense is just, in my opinion, I've said it once, I'll say it another 100 times, play Joe Flacco. He's 39 years old. He doesn't have much left in his career, but he's still playing good right now. That's the thing. If you got someone that comes in for 3 games, he's going to throw you 7 touchdowns, only 1 interception. He wins you 2 of those games. Every single one of these games has been a 1-score game, all 8.
Yeah, the Colts are always right there. Like you said, always within 1 score. And this was a tough game on the road against the Texans. And because it's on the road against a team that's leading their division, I don't think the Texans are necessarily elite in the NFL, but this is not a bad team. It's not like they went and lost to, insert bad team here. But with a quarterback in Stroud, another performance from Joe Mixon against the Colts that he tends to have only against the Colts. He was running through linebackers again. It's a very solid team, a good receiving core. And as we look at Anthony Richardson dropping back to make these passes, we can see it's not the deep ball, right? It's not the 40-yard bomb. It's the 10-yard dish off. It's the check down that the Colts can't find to this point. And everyone's shaking their heads as to where do you go from here?
Well, one, you can't blame every drop in bat. Like, you can't say it's just a miss, like a drop. You can't just blame it on the receiver every time. There's a lot of times where it's on Anthony Richardson. I will say, I do want to highlight Josh Downs' breakout game right there. 40 receptions, 109 yards. You saw it on that first thing. There he is right there. I will note he also had a catch on the 1-yard line that should have been a touchdown.
I thought so too.
Is overturned. I think that was a touchdown all day. Another touchdown that didn't count for the Colts will be the return off of the fumble. Everyone was excited. Texans fans breaking their glasses. Everybody was very upset, all for nothing. Got called back. Colts weren't able to do anything, and they lost.
See, as I look at Anthony Richardson, watch the film, the guy's just going too fast for his own good. Within this offense, it seems like he's always rushing, which is the exact opposite of guys like C.J. Stroud that are having success this year in the National Football League. And I feel like a lot of it is still this organization trying to turn Anthony Richardson into a pocket passer. He's not, frankly. This team is at its best when they're running the read option, when they're running RPOs, those run pass options, and that's what this guy is built for. He's not built to be Peyton Manning. I say this week after week, and throw slants over the middle. That's not this guy's game. And with a back in the backfield like Jonathan Taylor, we see glimpses of what this team can be, which is why I think I'm holding off on the panic button, at least for right now. When Jonathan Taylor can carry the ball 30 to 35 times and stay healthy, that's when this team is going to be at their best. What you can't see is Anthony Richardson dropping back 32 times in the game. I don't think you're going to get the numbers you want ever out of that exchange, at least this year. And alongside his performance, I think the offensive line needs to be a little bit better in their pass protection as well. And it's one play that sticks out. It's the last play, 1 second left, and it would have been a Hail Mary chance like we saw last night with the Redskins, or not the Redskins, excuse me, the Commanders and the Bears, where they would end up winning against the Bears at that. But it was a three-man rush on the right side of the offensive line, and Anthony Richardson gets sacked on the last play of the game. And it wasn't like he had 15 seconds in the backfield. It was maybe 3 or 4, and the right side of the offensive line just collapsed. So it's not just an AR thing. It's an entire offensive unit alongside the coaching staff that needs to get better.
Yeah, I know you said you were going to hold off on that. I'm very tempted. That thing's staring at me like a Pop-Tart at 10 o'clock in the morning right now. I cannot. It's very tempting. I'll hold off. I'll give them another week. They're 500 right now. There's, like you said, it's a pretty good Texans team. Nothing special, but I will temporarily hold off on the panic
We've
button
been saying
for
that a
this
couple
week.
weeks, though. We're going to hold off.
I'm just waiting to see something that really changes my mind about this team. Because right now I see some good, and then I see a game like this. And it's just every single game has been decided by one score. So that tells me that this team is one drive away from winning every single game. I think it's something they can do. Will they do it? That's another story. But not too hard of a schedule. We've talked about it every single week. It's not the most difficult schedule, obviously. Next Sunday, they're going to be playing the primetime game against the Vikings. So,
yes, Sunday Night Football against the Vikings, Bills, and Jets, and that's by far the hardest stretch of your season, followed by the Lions. After that will be the Patriots, Broncos, Titans, and then you can kind of get back on schedule there. But the Colts, they sit at 4-4 on the season, and we're ready for a breakthrough in Indianapolis. Move to basketball and the Pacers when we come back on Last Call.
Good morning, Greyhounds, and welcome back to your Wednesday show. We have some very exciting things to talk about with our very special guest.
So what do you find unique about UINDY, and what kind of pulled you here?
What are you doing?
Watching Good Morning Greyhounds every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m.
First look at the Indiana Pacers this season as the NBA season has opened up. They currently sit at 1-2. The one win coming against the Detroit Pistons. Huge loss against the Knicks, and then most recently an overtime loss against a Joel Embiid and Paul George-less 76ers team. So, not such a great look for Indiana after being the 6th seed last year, going to the Eastern Conference Finals, inevitably getting swept by Boston at that point. But I think we were expecting more from a Pacers team who really showed out in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and before the season, me and you did a little bit of talking last week about just where we thought this team was going to go. And I feel like if this team is going to repeat, I told you that I read an article about how the 3-year plan for the Pacers and their management was to get to the Eastern Conference Finals on year 3. They did that in year 1. Obviously, they're ahead of schedule, but I do think that this team is going to be taking a step back this year. Last year, coming into the playoffs, teams weren't expecting them. This was a dark horse team, so to speak, and they came out and shocked a couple teams, made it to the Eastern Conference Finals where they were eventually swept by a very good Boston team.
I think that's because, especially through these first 3 games, Pacers are one-dimensional. Pacers are push the pace, score the ball. And that is the name of the game for Indiana. That's their claim to fame, if you will. Coming into the season, they were ranked 2nd in offensive rating in the preseason polls, only to Boston. And through 3 games, the scouting report's pretty clear on Indiana. Just keep them under around 125 points. Just spitballing here, but as long as they don't let their scores flourish, then you'll be fine. And well, those scores, namely Tyrese Haliburton's not doing much of that. How about New York? You know, a lot of the discussions last year were who's the best point guard in the East? Tyrese Haliburton, Jalen Brunson. We got that matchup in the second game of the season, only for Tyrese Haliburton to put up a 0.
Yeah, it's not a great game. I will say another important stat to note for that is that the Pacers shot 10% from the three-point line. That's pretty hard to do. I don't know if you know percentages, but that's pretty hard to do. 1 out of every 10 shots they hit. So obviously that guy right there, he's not doing anything. I won't even get into that. I'll let you pick him apart if you want. But I have not been impressed with him at all. Brunson and Hart both had 20 points in that game. I'll go ahead and say it. This game last night was probably one of the worst defensive performances I've ever seen in my entire life by any NBA team ever. They put everyone in the game to try and guard Tyrese Maxey. No one could do it. He had 45 points. The Pacers had 7 people in double-digit scoring and still lost. They were leading with 40 seconds to go. Ends up going to overtime. In overtime, just not what you want to see out of an Eastern Conference Finals team or a team that should be going deep into the playoffs. And I know you are a professional hater of Miles Turner, and he helped prove your point. Only 4 rebounds to Andre Drummond's 17 last night. So, I mean, just not the team that we thought we were going to see. I know that I was telling you that this team's probably going to take a step back offensively. We haven't necessarily seen that. I didn't think it was possible, but they've somehow taken a step back defensively, which is
somehow
crazy. I mean, I didn't think it could get worse, but.
And it's a shock to us this season because you can watch Tyrese Haliburton and see the skill and the IQ that this guy has on the basketball floor, and especially coming off of a season with Team USA, sitting behind LeBron, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, 3 of the best to ever play the game. You win gold with some of the best leaders basketball's ever seen, and you're expecting this guy to come in refurbished as a leader, ready to take the Pacers to the next step and also take his own game to the next step. This is now a 2-time All-Star coming back looking to lead a team's championship push. And I think that was kind of a fairy tale last year, but after you make the Eastern Conference Finals, that's the realistic nature of the game now. It's championship or what are you doing for the Pacers? You've shown that you could get there, and now you have to get better. We haven't seen that to this point. And for Tyrese Haliburton, who was considered, a top 4 or 5 guard last season in the NBA, we look in the East, and right now, honestly, Jake, I'm putting Tyrese Maxey in front of him. I'm putting Jalen Brunson in front of him. I'm putting Drew Holiday in front of him. And, we know the talent's there. The execution just hasn't been through 3 games. But we know him as a player. He's streaky. I think he can get it going.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the beginning of the season, his first 2-3 games. So I don't think there's any need for the panic button. Obviously, we'll have it here every episode just in case they decide to slack off. But the Pacers have allowed a 20-point score in all 3 games, even having 2 in the one against the Knicks. And right there you can see those stats. He got up 32 shots against the team. I mean, at some point you just got to realize, he's got the hot hands. We double him off of screens. They just nothing on the defensive side. I was very disappointed. No changes, adjustments made at halftime. He did the same thing in the first half that he did in the second half. And I will hit on a positive real quick. They are averaging just under 30 assists per game, which is about double every other NBA team. I'm sure there's some that are closer, but just the ones I looked at, very good on that. But if you're going to have 28 assists, you got to win the game. The stats don't lie.
As the Pacers hop into the rest of their season, you're looking to obviously improve defensively, improve rebounding, get your stars back into the mix. And I feel like Tyrese Haliburton, he just needs someone to bounce off of. right? I think that's Pascal Siakam. To this point, he's been a pretty consistent 15 to 17. I think we still need elevation from him.
I do too. I think another thing I'd like to see them do is get him more involved in the offense. I feel like it's more of a give it to Siakam and let him go to work rather than get him off some ball screens. And I feel like that also would benefit Haliburton, Matherin, Neesmith, pretty much everybody on the team, just getting more offensive action. Like you said, they're a get out and run type of team. They're getting up shots in the first 10, 14 seconds of the shot clock. Sometimes you just got to slow it down, especially when you're shooting 10% from three. You got to realize, okay, this game plan is not working. We're going to have to try and score in the half court.
Well, Pacers have a lot of talent on that team, and we're expecting big things, which is why we are so critical. It's not the end of the world. They're 1-2, a lot of basketball yet to play. But as we wrap up Pacers, we'll do a U-turn, head back to the NFL for the Primetime Pick Em segment. Caden Colford, Jake Helton on last call. First game on the slate, Giants went to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. And the Steelers, under Mike Tomlin, if they're not anything, they are pretty consistent, right? And I feel like they're going to steady the ship, keep things going against the Giants, who have seen definitely better days as an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree with you. Russell Wilson really impressed me coming out in his first start. I loved Justin Fields the first half of the season. Got to do what you got to do if you're Mike Tomlin. I completely understand the decision. You bring in a veteran quarterback, you got to use them. If you're going to pay someone like Russell Wilson, you're going to have to use him. That's where the money is. Yeah. So definitely going with the Steelers on this one. They're trending in the right direction at the right time. Unfortunately for New York, they are sucking right now. So,
no good.
Yeah, no good at all. But moving on to our next pick, we got the Texans and the Jets. This one a little bit more interesting after yesterday's game. Stephon Diggs left the game with a non-contact knee injury. I'm not sure if you got the chance to see that. But another thing to note that this Texans team is on a two-game losing streak, or not a two-game losing streak, was on a losing streak a little bit. And now this Jets team, 5 games in a row they've lost. I don't think Aaron Rodgers loses 6 in a row. I don't know that he's ever done it in his entire career. I'm going with the Jets. I just got a gut feeling. Right before we started, I changed my pick. I'm going with the Jets.
You got the gambler's mentality. They're due for a win. And I'm with you. They're due for a win. But C.J. Stroud, and I think in this Texans team, too good, too sound, and New York is just in all kinds of disarray. So I don't see a world in which C.J. Stroud loses to the Jets in this one. Finally, for Sunday night, how about Colts getting moved up to primetime against the Vikings? This interesting because Minnesota just dropped the game to the Rams, which we discussed last week, which we both lost on.
Yeah.
By the way, we'll get to that in a second. But the Colts at 4-4, Vikings having a very solid season. This is the game where the Colts get over the hump. This is the game where I feel like they might figure it out.
Are you sure about that?
Not really. Not really. I'm there. The Vikings are too good. They're at home playing the Colts. Anthony Richardson hasn't been very good at all. And you see my face there. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. Vikings win.
So, yeah, I guess I'm going with your gut this weekend because after everything I just said about the Colts, for some reason, I'm going to pick them. The Vikings are on a 2-game losing streak. Like I said earlier, the Colts, every single game has been a 1-score game. I think that plays into their favor. The Jets just lost to I think it was the Lions on a last-second field goal. So I think that it does play their style. I really wish that they would play Flacco. That's my one hope is that I'm just
all you want for Christmas.
I'm just praying, please play Joe Flacco. Give me a good pick here, but I guess we'll see what happens with the Colts.
I'm even 7-7. You're working there.
Not the best records, but I think that'll change after this week, at least for me.
You think so?
I think so. I think I got 3 good picks here. I did my research 20 minutes ago.
All right. Caden Colford, Jake Helton. We'll check the records again next week right here on Last Call.